2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 have been destroyed by digital disruption. Let me say that again. Since 2000, half of the Fortune 500 no longer exist. Now that should make you very uncomfortable. What went wrong with these companies? Did they have the wrong strategy? Did they have the right strategy but couldn't execute it fast enough? The question you should ask yourselves is, how long do you have to disrupt your own organisation? Is it 30 months? Is it 30 weeks or is it 30 days? You need to take action now. So while Nigel was my warm-up man, I'm going to give you a dose of reality. And the CEOs of large banks are talking about this. Just recently, the CEO of Deutsche Bank said to his staff that if they were performing jobs like robots, they would be replaced by robots. You can understand that his staff were pretty unhappy. Let's look at a video.
When you said that you do have some employees now who are acting as robots,
yes.
How do you think the employees felt about that comment?
I think they know that. And the opportunity that we always talk about internally is upskilling the job, making jobs more satisfying. People who are just mechanically moving paper and numbers around don't have a very fulfilling job, and the career prospects there are not as attractive as they would be if we were able to automate a lot of that production, and then we can add a bit of thinking and a bit of creativity to the role.
How many jobs ultimately, though, do you think are at stake?
It's very hard to say, and that's not avoiding the question, it genuinely is. We need to increase the number of people who face clients and counterparts and external stakeholders, and reduce the number who are focused internally, producing numbers, calculating outputs. For the whole sector, it will be a lot of people over the next 5 to 10 years.
So when asked, he really didn't know how much disruption would impact his business or his industry. And I find in these times there is a lot of uncertainty. And what we need when we have uncertainty is someone that can make the uncertain just that little bit more certain. And so you need a futurist. Now, there are futurists that have been around for a long time, and my favourite futurist is a gentleman called Arthur C. Clarke. Sadly, he's passed away. But in 1974, he was asked for his view of what the world might look like in the year 2001. Let's see what he said.
With that movie, 2001, you're projecting us into the 21st century. I brought along my son Jonathan, who in the year 2001 will be the same age as I am now. Maybe he will be better adjusted to this kind of world that you're trying to portray.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console to which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theatre reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our whole life is built around the computer, do we become a computer-dependent society and computer-independent individuals?
In some ways, but they'll also enrich our society because it'll make it possible for us to live really anywhere we like. Any businessman, any executive could live almost anywhere on Earth and still do his business through a device like this. And this is a wonderful thing. It means we want to be stuck in cities, we better live out in the country or wherever we please, and still carry on complete interaction with human beings as well as with other computers.
So I think Arthur got it pretty right. He said that we would have a computer in our own homes. He said it would enable us to work away from home. He even knew what would be the societal impacts, how the impact of having this bit of technology with us all the time might change how we interact with other human beings. The one thing he didn't predict though was the iPhone 10. Maybe he should have thought a bit further. But that was looking 30 years into the distance. And like I said before, you don't have 30 years, you don't have 30 months, you may not even have 30 weeks. You need to know now. What are you going to do this week to do things different? So you need a practical futurist, and that's what I am. I'm going to give you some practical tips and tricks so you can leave this room and go back to work in the next few days being able to do things that can change. And following on from Nigel's talk, I want to give you permission to change and do things differently. Because hopefully at the end of my talk you'll see that you haven't got time. But technology is moving so fast you can't wait to see what happens next. But if I'm to be believed by all of you in the room, I think it's only fair that I share with you my digital credentials. Why have I been asked to come here and talk to you lovely people about disruption and technology? Hands up who knows what this is. Couple of hands in the room. This is a Sinclair ZX80, and that was my first computer back in 1980. It had 1 kilobyte of ROM and 4K of RAM and a squidgy keyboard, and I learned how to program it. And a few months ago, my daughter Madeline, she's now 11, we went to the Science Museum in London, and we walked past a glass case, and behind the glass case was the Sinclair ZX80. And Madeline turned to me and she said, "Daddy, isn't that your computer you keep talking about all the time?" "Yeah." "Well, it's behind the glass case in the museum. You must be really, really old." "Yes, Madeline, I'm really old." Can we have a sound up for a second? Who remembers this noise? What you would have heard is the dial-up tone. Who here remembers the dial-up tone? Lots of people. That's how we used to dial up to the internet. And back in 1983, I dialed up things like this, bulletin boards, where I would leave messages which we would now call email, and I would ring up to see if my friends had left me any messages. Now, I knew I was hooked on this online thing back in 1983 when my father had to get a second phone line because I was always dialed up and no one could get through. But we need to look at what success looks like in a digital world. And this conference is about the future of work. So, looking at the future, I'd like to go back just a bit to see where we've come from. And we've come from offices that looked like this, rows and rows of people. And in researching this talk, I wanted to find a picture of what an office looked like in the 1970s. And I found one. This is my father, Ron, in his office in Adelaide, Australia. Now look at the desk. You see no PC. For those millennials in the room, these things are called telephones. And you have to rotary dial. You don't push numbers, you actually dial. Who remembers the rotary dial? Yeah, lots of people. And the reason there are two is because he had 2 phone lines. And so if a third person rang, they couldn't get through. Let's look at what else is on the desk. The thing in the middle there, that's called a calculator. And it was actually connected to the power. It wasn't running on batteries and it had a huge screen. And that's how he made calculations. Didn't rely on computers. So I think we've come a long way since the 1970s. And in fact, if you look where we've come just with the desk, I've got a little video to play here, there's no sound, but look at from 1980 to present day how the desk is being replaced. Look what's going there. The spreadsheets have gone, graphics have gone, all the newspapers, they've gone on Amazon for books, the dictionary is now on the laptop, the pin board's gone off there as well, the PDF, the fax is gone. More things going off there. The Globe, that's now Google Maps. Our mail's gone onto the laptop. Calendar, of course, that's on the laptop. Skype. We're in 2006 now, and we can see before our very eyes how things have changed up to present day. And of course, everything ends up on the computer desktop. And I think actually, if this was 2017's version, it would all be on the mobile. So this afternoon I want to present you 3 acts. Imagine this is a play. I want to present to you 3 different propositions in 3 different acts. Because I believe the future of work is actually held by 3 specific areas. The first is culture change, and we'll talk initially about how you need to effect a culture change in your organisation for this digital stuff to work. The second act we'll look at will be leadership. How will you be a leader for tomorrow when you've got all of these technologies and all these different people in your organisation? And the third thing is, what is this driver of change? And I'm talking about digital disruption. So, why does disruption actually happen? I think there are 3 main reasons why disruption happens. First of all, there are high profits. Think about the taxi industry, where Uber plays, or the hotel industry. Where is there a high profit to be made where if someone comes in with a faster, cheaper, more efficient method, they will undercut you? Now in London, some of you may know that taxi drivers, black cabs, have to learn what's called the knowledge. They literally spend 3 to 4 years riding around the streets of London on a motor scooter, learning every single route. And when they're tested, they're asked how to get from there to there, and they literally have to say, this street, turn right. That's insane. With Uber and all these other apps, we know that we just go to a map and we know where to go. So the taxi industry in London has been massively disrupted because someone's come along with a better way of doing it. The second reason is that the technology exists. The fact that any of you right now can get your mobile out and do pretty much anything you could do a few years ago at work means that this is ripe for change. The third thing is consumers demand it. I don't know about you, but for a number of years now, I've been able to select the airline seat before I travel because I want to know whether I want a window or an aisle seat. And a few years ago, Hilton Hotels allowed me to check in and choose the room I wanted. And more recently, I can use my app on my phone to unlock the door. So when I travel internationally, I'm saving sometimes half an hour of not waiting in the queue and going straight to my room. So guess what? I arrive here at the Marriott, lovely hotel, but they don't have an app where I can go. So my expectation has already been set. So these three areas are where if you can actually match those, you can start to disrupt as well. So we talk about digital disruption, and some people say that's a negative word because it's disruptive. But what about digital transformation? Transforming what you have into the digital equivalent. But I think there we need to look for the digital opportunity. And I'll give you some things to take away and think about, and some of you are coming to my session this afternoon, where you can actually sit down and take apart your company and work out how you can make things digital and how you can stay ahead of your competition. Because some of the competitors out there haven't got the legacy of years and years of processes. They've started lives as a startup. They don't need to follow rules. In fact, all the companies that you can think of that are disruptors started by breaking the rules. Eventually, they were regulated and they have to behave like other companies, and we'll talk about that as well. But I want to talk about a few disruptors. And I'm going to put a number on the screen. I want anyone to tell me who they think I'm talking about. If I put the number 63,990, which disruptor am I talking about? Anyone? Let's give you another clue. 2 pizzas. Does that give you a clue? No? Okay, we'll keep going. What about a stock price chart with a nice up? Anyone? This is Amazon. Since 20 years ago, Amazon's stock price has grown by 63,990%. That's phenomenal growth in just 20 years. And when I was researching Amazon, I thought, they're not the typical disruptor. And I came across this video from Warren Buffett. Everyone knows who Warren Buffett is. He's a very rich billionaire in the US, and he makes stock predictions. And most people think he's normally right. And he was asked on an interview why he doesn't buy Amazon. Let's have a quick look at a video about Warren Buffett and Amazon.
Look at, with Amazon, he said, we needed the internet. Somebody else spent billions of dollars developing it, but it wouldn't have worked without the internet. He said we needed transportation. Somebody else had already built railroads and UPS and all of that sort of thing. And he said we needed payment systems. That would take billions of dollars to build, but that had already been done by Visa and all along the line. So he took 3 huge requirements where the other guys had spent the money, and then he combined them in a way that he didn't have to spend the money. It's brilliant. I give him great credit for it.
You have talked extensively over the last several days, even the last several months, about how Jeff Bezos is the best business leader you think we have right now in the United States, about how Amazon is a brilliant company. And now you're talking about how it's one of 5 companies that take no capital to continue to build. How come you don't buy shares of Amazon?
Stupidity. I was impressed with Jeff early. I never thought he could pull off what he did. And what's really, I mean, I thought he could pull off something, but on the scale that has happened, I mean, it's changed your behavior. You know, it's changed everybody in the office's behavior. And the remarkable thing about Jeff, and everything else, is he's done it in 2 industries almost simultaneously that really don't have that much connection. I've never seen any person develop 2 really important industries at the same time. and really be the operational guy in both. And he's done a good job with the Washington Post on the side, just on it personally. But here you take cloud services. I mean, there was a Charlie Rose show on this that he did 3 or 4 months ago. He thought he would have 2 years of runway. He got 7 years. You do not want to give Jeff Bezos a 7-year head start
before the competitors jumped in
any
on cloud
economic race.
services.
So at the same time he's shaking up the whole retail world, he's also shaking up the IT world simultaneously, and I take my hat off to him.
You see, Amazon doesn't compete, they disrupt. And so you saw there that he was able to take the 3 ingredients he needed. He needed a payment mechanism, he needed the internet, he needed transportation. Had all been built before he turned up, and he was able to build a business around that. And then he thought, with his cloud services business, we've got all these computers that are running, why don't we rent some spare capacity to people that might want to run their own servers? And as you heard in the clip, he had 7 years of runway. Do you want to give your competitors 7 years of runway? No. The 2 pizzas. Anyone know the whole 2 pizza rule that Jeff Bezos has? He basically says the size of his teams should be no larger than you could feed them with 2 pizzas. Any more people and you get what's called groupthink. You get people agreeing and not having a debate. So something to think about. How big are the size of your teams? Could you feed them with a couple of pizzas? Now, lately, Amazon has introduced more and more innovations, and last week they announced Amazon Key. Who's heard of Amazon Key? Few people. This is kind of revolutionary. It's all about in-home delivery. Let's play the video.
You already know Amazon is the easiest way to get what you need. Like gifts for people whose birthday you've forgotten. As an Amazon Prime member, you'll now be able to use Amazon Key, a new service that enables in-home delivery. With the Amazon Key app, you can also grant access to the people you trust. Let's say you need to remotely manage guest access to the front door of your home, maybe to let in your dog walker, a friend, or maybe to let in a team of home cleaning ninjas. To get started, order the Amazon Key in-home kit, which includes Amazon Cloud Cam and one of several compatible smart locks. Have it installed by a pro, or if you're handy, install it yourself. Once installed, it's no problem if you're not at home. With Amazon Key, you can get your packages delivered just inside your door. You can track your delivery with real-time notifications, watch the delivery happening live, or review a video of the delivery after it's complete. Maybe you don't want your packages sitting out on display. Maybe rain is in the forecast. Or maybe you just need your mom's gift moments before she walks through the door. You know, because you're awesome.
When you're designing digital services, you need to remove a friction point. And Amazon found, even though they'd innovated their business model, a friction point was, if you're not home to get the delivery, sometimes people steal the deliveries. That's not cool. So why not actually allow Amazon to deliver into your home? And you can think of the other services like the cleaning and all those sorts of things as well. Now, when I shared this on my social networks, everyone went, oh, it's never going to take off. But here's the point. Disruptors don't listen to people who say it won't happen or it can't happen. Who here had a mobile phone in 1994? I had a mobile phone in 1994. I was the first of my friends to have one. It was incredibly expensive. The calls were really expensive. And after a while, more and more people went, oh, I know why you've got a mobile phone. It means people can contact you easily and remove that friction point. And you know what? Within 5 years, all of my friends had one. But I had to be the first to see what this was doing. So another thing I encourage you to do is be the first. Be the first to try these technologies, know how consumers will use them. But disruption is absolutely everywhere. Who here uses WhatsApp? Yeah? Any idea how many WhatsApps are sent every day around the world? Throw out a number. 3 billion? Anyone higher than 3 billion? A million? Billion? What about 64 billion WhatsApp messages a day around the world on one network with one app? Now let's contrast it with the old way of doing SMS. Anyone got an idea of how many SMS are sent around the world globally every day?
1 million?
20 billion. So you've got more than 3 times the number of messages on one app, on one network. That is massive disruption, and it's just the start. But disruption is making the front page. A few months ago, the Financial Times in the UK talked about the fact that WPP, who are the largest advertising firm, were being hit by digital disruption. And last year, on the front page of the Singapore Times, the Prime Minister, in his annual address, called out the fact that Singapore as a nation has to embrace disruption. And every year, Prime Minister Lee does an hour-long address. And I picked out just 2 minutes of what he said. Let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister of a country like Singapore is saying about disruption.
The defining challenge which we face in this era is disruption. Things are changing fast, old models are not working, new models are coming thick and fast, and we are having to adjust and to keep up. Because of technology, globalization. And the disruption will happen over and over again, relentlessly. I just used the familiar example of the taxi business. What do we do in Singapore? We can respond to disruptive change like this in 2 ways. We can close ourselves off, try to stop people from using the new technology. You must do things the way you have always done it. So Uber out, Grab out. Any new services coming along? No. We impose restrictions, we protect the old ways, the taxi companies, and we force everybody to stick to that. But we'll be left behind and our commuters will lose out, and our economy will suffer. The other way is to embrace change. Let the disruption happen. You can't stop it, but you can adjust it. You can adjust to it. Let the commuters enjoy better service, but help the incumbents, and especially help the taxi drivers to adapt to the changes.
So we heard from Nigel this morning about all of us in the zoo, and we worked out in the room who is who in the zoo. And some of you love change. I'm a monkey, so I love being out there trying new things, and I love change. But from the show of hand and the noise of the zoo, I suspect that some of you are not very comfortable with change. And in fact, the fear of the unknown is sometimes a real problem. And recently, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a research paper, and they said that fear of disruption is sometimes more damaging than the actual disruption. It's paralysed in fear. We're not sure what to do. We know everyone else is doing something. What do we do to keep up? We can't actually compete. What I want to show you, though, are some of the signs of real disruption. So when these things happen, you know that disruption is happening for good. So the first thing is you have more profitable business models. You're making more money because you can reduce your cost, because your cost to serve your customers might be lower. More efficient processes. If you have to push paper around between departments, between consumers, they will find another way. Just as people have found that a service like Uber could be more convenient than the traditional offerings. Enhanced offering to users. Users have more choice because they, as I said, the 3 models, they have the technology that's there and they have an expectation. And here are 3 areas that you need to fix. And I hope all your pens and papers are out. Here are the 3 areas you need to fix and you can fix with digital. The business model. How do you get more share of customer? How do you reduce costs with your business model? Customer experience. My Hilton experience was that I will only stay at a Hilton where I have a choice, because they give me a choice to jump the queue and they give me a choice to choose my room. And so I've expected that. And I'll now expect that in other services as well. And finally, your internal processes. I've worked in large companies, I've worked in small companies, and the thing that slows me down is having to go through all these internal processes and forms. If you can start disrupting yourself internally, your customers will see that you have reduced friction points and are easier to deal with. So let's look at some real disruptors. And I give this talk a lot, and I've been writing and talking about disruption for probably 5 or 7 years. And like many of my peers, I was using the same example. Uber gets used a lot. But Uber isn't always the best example. And a couple of weeks ago, on one of my feedback forms, one of the participants in my courses said, "Can you give us some new examples?" And I thought, yes, I can. I need to start disrupting myself and challenge whether there are other companies other than Uber. So I publicly outed myself. I said, I'm actually going to stop doing this. I put a post on LinkedIn. I said, let's stop using this slide that talks about the world's largest taxi company has no taxis. You've all heard this before. And I had 53,970 people view this particular post on LinkedIn. It was pretty popular. I thought I might be onto something here. I've got to start disrupting myself. So I won't tell you about the company that has no vehicles. We're not going to talk about that. But they're in a lot of trouble. They're about to lose their license to operate in London. They'll keep it. Uber has litigation built into their business model. This has happened in so many other cities. It's just another hurdle to cross. And I saw recently that Uber are actually going to offer a credit card. That's one way to lock in these millennials. You're getting points by using Uber. They're looking to disrupt themselves. I won't talk about the world's largest accommodation provider has no real estate because we know who that is. But in London, that company is actually impacting the rental market. If you're a landlord and you can rent your property 4 or 5 times a month at a high price versus to one person for 30 days, who wouldn't? And so in London where I live, it's getting harder and harder to rent because the Airbnb model is starting to, and this is impacting communities. This is a big deal. And I saw this tweet the other day from the Financial Times. It read, Airbnb is partnering with a real estate developer to build their own brand apartments. I love this response. This is a hotel. You're building a hotel. They called them out. And we won't talk about the world's largest media producer because we don't need to talk about Netflix. I want to show you some new disruptors. And last week in London, I spoke at an insurance conference. And I found some really interesting disruptors that are in the insurance market. But what I want you to think about while I'm showing you these examples on video is how this applies to your company. Look at what they've done to disrupt a specific industry. What can you be doing? Can you do it faster? Can you do it better? Can you do it cheaper? Are there things that wouldn't work? Are there ways you can go and talk to the government or the regulators about making it easier to do business? So think of the nature of insurance. It's somewhat cyclical. It's protecting risk. But as I was showing the first example from a company called Lemonade, anyone heard of Lemonade? Not the drink, but the insurance company. They're in the US and they're a startup. And what was really interesting is after my presentation at this insurance conference last week, the panel after me was full of CEOs of traditional companies. They said, oh, this isn't disruptive. And we went, hang on. They've taken apart your whole business model and they've removed multiple friction points. What isn't disruptive about it? So as you watch these 3 examples, I want you to think about your company and what you can do to do better than they have done. Let's look at the first example from Lemonade. So show of hands, who deals with their insurance company like that? Nice and frictionless? Few people. That's the way I want to deal with not just my insurance company, my telephone company, my water company, my employer. So again, think about how they have removed some friction points and made it easy. Now, I'm sure behind the scenes it's quite intensive and there's lots to do. If you're a very established insurance company, I'm sure it's a lot harder to change. The second example I want to show is called Trove. Who here's heard of Trove? T-R-O-V? Okay, good. Trove is again about insurance, but this is about short-term insurance. Again, normally if you insure your laptop or your car, you might do it once a year, and it comes around, oh, I've got to renew it, it's a pain. Well, what about if you only want to insure things when you actually think you might lose them? So this is the example of Trove.
I'm leaving my house now. And as I step outside, all of these things with me are fully insured against loss or damage, instantly. That trick I just showed you, that's Trove. Trove is smart insurance. Unlike blanket policies that cover everything at once, Trove helps me protect just the things I care about. All I have to do is swipe to protect. So, if anything happens, just about anything you can imagine, I know my camera's covered. Trove makes it easy to file a claim through the app. I just answer these questions, and Trove handles the rest. And every time I leave my house, things like my laptop and phone are protected. Trove puts me in control of the things I care about, and that's really smart.
So again, they've removed some friction points. And when I show that to traditional insurers, they go, oh, that would never happen, that's but it is happening. And around the world, governments and regulators and industries are trying to make it easier for consumers to share data between each other, and that's why these things like Trove work. The final example is from a company called Assam Bank. They are an app-only bank. They have no branches. You can't go into a bank and withdraw your money. You only deal with them online or through the app. And so they don't need to have really expensive branches and signage and everything else. Let's see how Atom works. So I saw on one of those screens it said it only takes 10 minutes. Why 10 minutes? Why does it take 10 minutes to open a bank account? It should be instant. So show of hands, who here saw some examples of where they could use some of those things in your organisations? A few people? Yeah. But you need to go away and think about what have they done to enable these things to happen, because, disruption is hard. And the example of Atom and others is that they are running into regulation issues. So in the UK, a bank like Atom has to have enough financial security as a big bank like HSBC or Barclays. And they can't, they're only a small company. So they've decided to delay some of the products that they want to launch because they need to appear like a big bank. And what I told the insurance industry, I'm going to tell you, it's okay to talk to the people that regulate these industries. Because I'm sure in a building somewhere in Cairo, you've got people that write regulations in the government. And they're probably scratching their head too. How do we understand this disruption? We know things are changing. We know things from other countries are starting to seep in here. How do we stay ahead? And what I gave the advice to the insurance group was, you can help educate the regulators. You can bring them up to speed. Because if you don't, they won't understand. I'll give you an example. Years ago in Australia, I worked for a big telco called Telstra. And I was in the business development group. And whenever I wanted to talk to someone, I needed to get a non-disclosure agreement. Know what an NDA is? It means you can't tell any secrets. And it would take me 3 weeks. And so whenever I went to the group to get one, I said, hello, is this the business prevention department? I need a non-disclosure agreement. Oh, it's going to take 3 weeks. So I sat down with them. I said, look, here's what I've got to achieve, and if you could somehow make your processes a bit faster, we could get more really exciting things into Telstra. And they went, oh. Now that you mention it, we can actually make it easier. Now that we know what you're trying to achieve, we can help you. So disruption isn't always about technology. It's sometimes around culture change in companies and between companies as well. but whole industries are being disrupted. And I came across this great report from Deloitte, actually in Australia, called Short Fuse, Big Bang. And they looked at a quadrant of industries in Australia, and it's just as relevant in this part of the world as well. And they looked at, along the bottom line, was how many years until you're being disrupted, how long is the fuse before it goes off, and how big is the explosion, the bang up the top. What we need to look at, though, is who is in this top left, who is in the short fuse, big bang. Retail, ICT and media, finance, professional services, real estate. Anyone in the room in any of those industries? You should be really worried, because this report is from 2012. It's already happened. If you're in any of those industries, you have already been disrupted. We spoke before about the word disruption, and can it be seen as a negative word? So I want to think about also the notion of being innovators. And you can innovate by slowly changing your existing processes, and you don't have to become an online bank overnight or an online insurer. You can make incremental improvements that will improve the life of your customers as well as your employees. So what do you have to do to get ready to innovate? This brings us to Act 2, which is the culture change. And this is hard, because as we saw before, we are all very different animals, literally. And we don't like changing. Some like changing more than others. And so if you have an appreciation of what other people want to achieve, you can then help get them to row the same way that you want to. So what's the biggest barrier to transformation? Anyone? People. Because we're lovely, darling human beings, but we like saying no. No, it's too hard. No, it hasn't been done this way before. No, we can't possibly change. But what you've seen from the examples before is that people can change, and people can develop services that don't rely on someone else saying no. And I wonder if you've had any of these discussions. I'm going to throw some quotes on the screen. Let's say your CEO says, this year is about digital transformation. I'm going to translate that. What he or she is actually saying is, we're doing a series of IT and website upgrades to boost revenue and keep investors happy. That's not transformation, that's painting over the cracks. And our Chief Financial Officer says, we're investing in digital transformation. Anyone have someone say something like that? Stand up from a stage like here and saying, we're going to be digitally transformed. What they're really saying? We need to automate and shift low-skilled work offshore to reduce costs. That's not transformation. That's just shaving costs. And the final one, I'm a consultant, so I can say this. A consultant comes to you and says, we're crafting a digital transformation strategy. What does that mean? It means you need to pay us a great deal of money for a set of slides that recommend you spend more, because that's what consultants do. But if you're going to innovate, you have to change the way your teams are structured. You need small innovation teams. You need to stop doing something and put money towards doing something now. Not waiting 30 years for Arthur C. Clarke to tell you what's going to happen. Not even waiting for me to say what's happening in 30 days. But you need to be aware of digital silos, because what happens a lot, I've seen it happen in the UK and America, people set up these innovation groups. Barclays Bank have got an amazing series of buildings called Rise. There's one in Melbourne, there's one in London, one in New York. And this is like a WeWork, this is like a serviced office where fintech, financial tech startups can come in and actually rent space and work with Barclays. And I went to the one in London. They showed me around, and we had a barbecue on the top floor. And literally from the top floor of this building in Shoreditch, which is the sort of tech area of London, they could see Canary Wharf, where all the banks are. And they looked across and they saw the big Barclays logo on the bank, and they said, oh, that's where all the bankers are. And I'm sure someone in Canary Wharf looks from their building down to Shoreditch and goes, that's where all the funky kids are. You've now got two silos where the people in head office are happy that they've got an innovation program running and funky desks and things like that, but there's still two tribes that haven't come together. And Aviva, the insurance giant, has also set up some garages. And that's fine, but eventually it all has to come together. And it can't be done in a silo, and it can't be done in separate buildings. And I love this quote, when digital transformation is over, you can't go back to business as usual. If you've become a Lemonade or an Assam Bank or an Airbnb, you can't go backwards. You can only go forwards, because if you optimise for a moment, you're not optimising for the future. One big area of culture change is about becoming a collaborative organisation and having a collaboration culture. And believe me, this is hard. I spent the last 4 years working in IBM, a company of 400,000 people in 206 countries around the world. They need to communicate with each other. And I would get onto stages like this only because someone in the organisation knew who I was and what I could do. And what I practiced was a thing called working out loud. Anyone knows what working out loud means? It's as it says. It's telling everyone what you're doing. And this may appear a bit strange. Why are you telling everyone what you're doing? Aren't you giving secrets away? Aren't you removing your power base by other people knowing what you're doing? Absolutely not. Working out loud and collaborating can be the best thing you could possibly do. And there's a great book by a guy called John Stepper who developed this whole notion of working out loud. You can buy it on Amazon. And initially he was talking about forming groups where when you work out loud and you tell people what you're doing, people can help you. And then people inside organisations like IBM started to practice this working out loud. And using internal networks, we would tell other people what we're doing. And there are 5 key tenets of working out loud. We'll go through them in a second. Relationships, generosity, visible work, purposeful discovery, and a growth mindset. Let's look at each of those briefly. Relationships. Once you share what you're doing, people want to help. But they can only know that you need help by you communicating and working out loud. Just as none of you this morning knew what I knew until I got up here and started talking about it. The second thing is generosity. People like to help other people. And I know from hundreds and hundreds of people in IBM, when I would send them a slide deck or I would give them an answer to a question, they're like, oh, thanks for that. And they remember me for next time. It's human nature to want to help other people. But unless you work out loud and tell people what you need help on, they're never going to know if you keep it close to your chest. And this is the visible work. So it doesn't mean every 5 seconds you're tweeting or blogging, hey, look at me, I'm doing all this amazing stuff. But working out loud is actually articulating what it is you're working on or what you need help on. And I've got to tell you, in a company of 400,000 people, there's always someone who knows the answer. And often, it's not the person you might think. Barry in accounts isn't a product expert, but he knows how this particular product works. And if only someone were to ask him, he would be able to give some sound advice. Purposeful discovery. You can't just be out there looking for things. You need to say, I need to know how to do this particular product transfer. I'm not sure how it will work. There's got to be someone that can help me, and I'll find that. And finally, having a growth mindset, that you are learning by doing this and you can share. And for many people, this is quite foreign because your value to an organisation isn't what you know, it's what you share. And for the more mature in the audience, we are used to keeping things close to our chest. We don't want you to know what we're doing because that's our power base. The younger in the room, you've grown up sharing. You can't help but tell people what you're doing. And so for your culture to change, you need to think that your value to an organisation is not what you know, it's what you share. And when you share and it's reciprocated, it can become very, very powerful. Who here uses an internal tool like a Slack or a Chatter or a Yammer in your organisation? A few people? Now, if I had a dollar or a euro or a pound for every time someone said that it didn't really work, I wouldn't be standing here, I'd be a billionaire. Because what happens is people go online, they pay their money or they use the free version, they start using it, and then it just doesn't work. And as a consultant, I will be called in to try and rescue some of these projects. Oh, we've installed Yammer, it didn't work. We installed Slack, it didn't work. It didn't work because you didn't have a working out loud mindset. You didn't know how to use it. You were saying, if I tell you what I'm doing, then I will lose my power. No, by telling people what you're doing, they will help you. And just last month in the Harvard Business Review, they had a really amazing research study on how these tools are used. In fact, they surveyed 4,200 companies and 78% of them were using a tool. But I'm sure that many of them were using the tool badly. And this article talks about traps to look out for. Trap 1 is that we make these assumptions about millennials. We think that because they like sharing and they tweet and blog and Facebook and Snapchat all the time, they're going to be extremely comfortable doing that at work. It's a bit like the fear in the headlights syndrome where, oh, I don't want to to share because I'm brand new in the company, and so people will assume that, the millennials will work this out. And so it doesn't always work. And I want to introduce you to a guy called Max Black. We'll need the video sound up in a second. Max is an IBMer, and I met him a couple of years ago. And he's a 25-year-old consultant, works in New York. And back a couple of years ago, he put in an expense claim for an Uber taxi ride, and it was rejected. So being a millennial, rather than complaining to his manager, he thought he would go a lot wider. So we'll need the sound for this. Let's see what Max did.
As if many of my colleagues, all of us, we travel all the time. This is the way we get from point A to point B. They had never heard of Uber. One of my first ideas was, we should make a petition. I got thousands of emails of people commenting or liking this person like your post. Diane posted. Diane Gerson, our head of HR. Diane. So she posted on there, and she thanked us for a thoughtful debate, and basically said, this is good what you did. This is great that you had this discussion, and we've investigated the policy, and we're going to change it.
This is unheard of a few years ago. A 25-year-old that no one knew was able to change the policy of a Fortune 5 company. He was working out loud. He said, I don't think this is fair. And the backstory was, HR had clamped down because something had happened with a particular taxi ride and they put a blanket ban on it. But when HR was understanding what the problem was, they solved the problem overnight and the policy was changed. And so what happens then is other employees go, you know what, it's okay to be constructively critical because management is listening, and if they don't know there's a problem, they can't fix it. And if there's a problem in your internal processes, customers will start to see it as well. So, next trap from the HBR study was that repressing informal communication. When you have that water cooler moment, or you come in the morning and say, how are you, and that's a social thing, on business networks, people are like, I shouldn't talk about what I do in my private life because this is a business network. And so what happens was those internal discussions that would normally happen face-to-face weren't happening online. And so we all assumed that this would facilitate discussion, when in fact it was hindering it. So we need to be aware of that. Trap number 3 was failure to recognise learning. When you're on an internal network like a Slack or a Yammer or a Chatter looking for information, you're actually learning. And if we don't recognise that and give people time and space to do that, then they'll feel like they're wasting time because they're on the social network and they may not want to use it. Trap 4 was focusing on the wrong data. So sometimes the data may say something, and the example in the HBR report was that a lady who was running a laboratory, one of her juniors was able to answer questions faster than she could, and he was getting all the praise on this social network, and she ended up leaving. And they were upset about that, so they asked her why she had left, and people weren't recognising that she had a lot of knowledge and data, she just wasn't sharing it. So sometimes these networks can appear great, but unless you invest in a culture change, they can fail and be completely useless. Who knows what being agile means? Few people. So if you're a software developer, there's a thing called Agile Methodology, where you have 2-week sprints and you develop things very quickly. And I presented this to a group of executives at the London Business School a couple of years ago. And I said the old way is you run a project with what they call waterfall, and so you do one thing and then wait for that and you do another thing. And if the project fails after 2 years, you've lost all your money. Whereas with Agile, you would do things every 2 weeks and you would check and you would then... And they didn't quite get this. They said, hang on, so you do something for 2 weeks and if it fails, you only lose 2 weeks, you don't lose 2 years. And so Agile methodology can start to be used in your own organisations and doing things quickly. Famously, Queen Victoria, when she had her staff meetings, removed all the chairs. And her meetings lasted 15 minutes because there was nowhere to sit. And so at this insurance conference the other week, I suggested, why don't you remove all the chairs from your meeting rooms? People will walk in and they won't have anywhere to sit. They'll have a quick meeting. They'll then get back to what they need to do. So sometimes you have to do something to completely change the culture and the dynamic to have people agree with you. So you need short cycles. And again, think about the processes that you use today. Are you able to do and change them quickly and test them and put them back into production? So you want a cycle here of you build, test, learn, improve every 2 weeks. And I'm sure for some of you in the room, that's just not possible. Because the billing system can't be changed more than twice a year, so we can't do that. I don't know about you, but I don't know how to spell the word can't. I'm an optimist, I'm a monkey, so I just get it done. And so maybe you need people like me to push against the door and get things done. But great culture starts with trust. And I think if you trust your employers, you employ them, you pay them a lot of money, you need to trust that they're going to do the right things. And I was thinking the other day, what sort of employer would I want to work for? How would they trust and empower me in my ideal employer if I could just think of the best employer possible? So I thought of some things I would want on my checklist. My ideal employer would, nearly every document is fully open for anyone to read and comment on, so I can see what's going on, I can work out loud. That's the way I work, I want that. Our spending policy, use good judgment. That'd be a good policy, rather than lots of forms to fill out and everything else. What about if their travel policy said, act in our best interests? That's fair, and if you respect and trust me, I'm going to be frugal with your money. And what about if your vacation policy was take vacation? Don't give me only 2 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, just say take vacation. And maybe people will do the right thing and actually take what they need and be more rested. And finally, what about a parental leave policy? Who here is a parent in the room? New parents? Yeah. What about if the policy said, take care of your baby and yourself? All sounds pretty straightforward, and how many people think companies like these exist in the world? This is actually the policy of Netflix. This is taken word for word from their internal, externally shown document about the culture at Netflix. If you work at Netflix, that's how they treat you. And you've got to wonder why a company like Netflix is disrupting over and over again. They trust their employees, they have a culture where they think you're smart, so let's actually use that. Richard Branson famously said that you need to get the order right. Often people think we've got to please our shareholders. I think you've got to start with your people. Get the people right, then look after your customers, and then look after your shareholders. And I'm sure many of you have worked, might work, will work with companies that have this the other way around, that say our shareholders are first. You think about it, if you're a happy employee and you're working in a great culture, then you will actually treat customers really well and have a great experience. But you can't forget the customer. Early last year, I was in New York and I heard from a guy called Kevin Plank, who's the CEO of Under Armour. Under Armour make fitness equipment and clothes. And he put up a picture of his whiteboard in his office. And around all the scribbles, the picture simply said, don't forget to sell shirts and shoes. Don't forget to sell shirts and shoes. No matter how many fans or followers or likes or revenue or customer acquisition or retention, you've got to sell more stuff. And I want to put this picture here for a couple of minutes to make you realise that you've got to have the end goal in mind. We don't just want to transform for transformation's sake. How do we sell more stuff? How do we have happier customers and happier employees to sell more shirts and shoes? So when you go back to your organisation, I want you to replace the word shirts and shoes with what you sell. And I want you, and I'm going to dare you, to put that on one of your whiteboards. Sell more X and Y. That'll start a discussion. Hey, who put that there? And why is it in permanent ink so I can't rub it out? I'm being disruptive because this crazy Australian came to Cairo and said that we were allowed to disrupt our business. So now we're into Act 3. And we need to talk about leadership. Because it's all very well for me to say I want to work in this sort of company and I want to be treated like an equal and I want to work out loud. But unless I'm given them permission to do that, it will fail. And we need to have leaders in our organisations, many of you represented here today, that will act that way. And I can think of no better company that has had to transform than General Electric, GE. And their CEO, just retired after 16 years, Jeffrey Imlett, has talked about the things he did at GE. Now, they haven't finished yet, and even the incoming CEO says there's a lot to do. But this is like IBM was a company that nearly went bust because they weren't able to move fast enough. And so a couple of quotes from him are really interesting. He said, you have to have belief that survival of your company depends on anticipating the change. Accept that you're going to be disrupted. Think of it another way. Who here worries about cybersecurity and hacking? Think of it another way. Just assume you're going to get hacked. Assume that it's going to happen and then have the ability to be ready for it. A quick aside, who here knows what two-factor authentication is? 2FA? If you use banking, sometimes you have to use an app or a number generator to log on to your banking. And most cyber attacks happen because the internal systems are compromised. If someone gets your Gmail password and goes through your mail and finds the spreadsheet with all the company passwords, that's how companies get hacked. So assume it's going to happen and prepare for it. He also said you need to have a sustained commitment to the change. A bit like I said before, once it's started, you can't go back. You need to be leaning forward when you talk about digital, not taking a step back. And finally, he said you need to embrace new kinds of talent, new culture, a new way of doing things. And this brings me to the new breed. But are you curious about digital? When someone talks about digital, do you lean forward? Do you ask questions? Do you challenge your leadership about whether you're going fast enough? Because I think there's a thing that we need to talk about, which is digital diversity. I'm a strong advocate for diversity on boards in terms of male-female ratio, but I think we also need to have diversity around digital literacy. Does your board or your management team truly understand the things I've talked about this afternoon? Are those things keeping them anxious, or are they on the front foot saying we really need to talk about them? Because you need a digital board, not one like this. You need one like this, that sees things through a digital lens. And I'm a strong opponent that on any board, any management team, you need not one, but two digital non-executive directors. People that can act and do the business of a board like recruitment and benefits and all that sort of stuff, but also understand the language of digital and keep the board honest. Because there are so many times I've heard of companies that go to the west coast of America, they do the Facebook and the Google and the Twitter too, and they come back going, we're going to be a digital company. And the next board meeting happens and it's back to usual. But if every board cycle you've got two agitators like me going, we're not going fast enough, are you thinking about digital? What are we doing? Are we having these innovation teams? Then the culture will never change. You need to think like a startup. I'm lucky that I can actually say I've worked in 6 startups over the last 12 years. I know what it's like. It's hard, it's tough, but it's exhilarating. And if I was to stand here and tell you to think like a startup and I hadn't been in a startup, I'd be a fraud. You need to think about why these Ubers and Airbnbs and Lemonades, why they're being successful, because they started from scratch. They didn't have any rules. They didn't have any money. Airbnb, anyone know why the company's called Airbnb? Air mattresses. The guys that started it with the Bank of Visa, they basically put everything on their Visa card, had a crazy idea that they would rent out their home with an air mattress. And they thought, how many other people in America might also have a spare room and an air mattress? After a while they thought, business model's a bit flawed. The addressable market for people in America with the spare room and a blow-up mattress is probably quite low. We've got to pivot to something else. But they started with the Bank of Visa. They started with nothing and a crazy idea. But employees are going to start to demand to be more digital. As you employ younger people that are experienced and comfortable dealing with a digital interface, you're going to find that more and more people will want to have this. They're not going to put up with the old way and paper forms and those sorts of things. Who here works in HR, human resources? Okay. I'm going to give you permission to change your mission statement. You are no longer cost saving and value add. You are so much more. You have the future of your organisation in your hands. And you can see this new talent coming on board. So you are going to have to start enabling digital teams. You're going to assume that your employees and your customers want to deal with you in a digital way. If you're in HR, you then transition to managing the work and hyper-connected employee. Because you've now got employees that are consumers. Are you using your own employees for market research and feedback? Better still, what about using your consumers as advocates? In IBM, we had 400,000 people that were paid to say great things about the company because they worked there. And I could give a whole talk about how you can use social media and use your employees to be those brand advocates. And whether you like it or not, they're going to be talking about you. And if there are any marketers in the room, this is a marketer's dream, to have a workforce that wants to help promote your organisation. So think about that. It also means as a leader, you're going to have multi-generational teams. And I've now got to mention the M word, millennials. It would not be a conference about change unless I'm contractually obliged to mention the M word. Who here in the room thinks they're a millennial? I'm a millennial. I'm a 49-year-old man trapped in a 23-year-old body because I think like a millennial, and I'm a monkey, and I try and break things, and I try and change things. But I reckon millennials have been given been hard done by. And I used to think that they weren't the way that people said. They're not lazy, they're not entitled. And I was on LinkedIn the other day, and someone actually put up this message. He said, "I'm consistently amazed how many applications I receive from university graduates looking for their first ever job. I don't know about you, when I left university I had done 3 or 4 or 5 jobs. I knew what it was like to work in an organisation and play by the rules." And Simon Sinek is a keynote speaker who talks a lot about millennials, and he thinks, rightly or wrongly, that the millennial problem is because millennial parents tell their children that they are wonderful and they can do anything. And they haven't had that first job until they leave uni. And they go into work and they find out they're not wonderful and they can't do anything and everything. They're having to live by the rules. But that's okay. If we can anticipate this and see what these people are like, we can use them to our advantage. And a couple of years ago, Korn Ferry, who are a recruitment company, looked at the types of leaders that you would need for a digital transformation. And there are 2 types. Many of you in the room would what we would call going digital. We know how to influence the top levels, we know how to get things done, we know how to get a business case approved. But we're not as comfortable with digital technology as the more early adopters, who are the born digital. These are the millennials who are born with an iPhone in their mouth. They're completely comfortable with technology, but they are not able to influence the most senior levels. But the 2 tribes need each other. And as an organisation, as leaders, as employees, when you realise that one can learn from the other, then you'll have a very, very powerful set of skills indeed. I firmly believe, though, that to get digital, you've got to be digital. Now, I'm an early adopter. I like playing with things, I like breaking things to see how they work, to then see how consumers might use them. So I'm an early adopter. I was on LinkedIn in 2004. I joined Twitter in 2007. You heard that I was dialing up bulletin boards in 1983. So I've been playing with this stuff for a long time. And I'm going to throw some buzzwords at you. And this has become my most photographed slide. If any of these words are new to you, go and look them up. Go to Wikipedia, go to your favourite source and find out what they mean, because every single word on this screen is going to impact every one of your industries in the next 2 years, whether you like it or not. I don't expect you to be an expert in quantum computing or in smart contracts or in cognitive. I just need you to understand what this means, because the smaller companies are using these technologies to get ahead. When requests for proposals or requests for information comes in from companies, they'll be asking whether you can support these technologies. And if your whole organisation is thinking digitally, you are being inquisitive. You are being enabled and you're being allowed to learn these new technologies. Now, one of them here is blockchain. Who knows what blockchain is? We've heard a lot about blockchain because it's associated with cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. But if I rename blockchain and I tell you that it is a distributed ledger, it is one version of the truth, those of you in the room that deal with records will go, that's really interesting. I now have one global system with one version of the truth that I can have smart contracts. And back to what the CEO of Deutsche Bank was saying, there will be a time, and it's happening already, where low-level contract negotiations are done electronically. And so when I renew my insurance, I don't have to worry about logging on somewhere. I've got systems in the background that are doing it for me. And in Europe at the moment, we're wrestling with a new legislation called GDPR. Anyone heard of GDPR? It stands for General Data Protection Regulation. And it is a nightmare. essentially means by the middle of next year, if you hold data on customers in Europe, you have to have a whole lot more control, and as an employee or a customer, I can demand this in digital format. And it is driving marketers and companies crazy. One of the large organisations in the UK that owns pubs, public houses, called Wetherspoons, decided to delete their whole customer database. They said it was easier to delete it than have to go through being compliant for GDPR. Now, I'm an optimist, so I thought there's got to be another way to use this to our advantage. And I look at all these social networks that have a lot of information about me, and there's a great graphic here that shows the value that I am to these organisations. So apparently my data is worth $81 to Twitter or $69 to LinkedIn. I've not seen a cent of that. It's because when the product is free, the product is me. The reason you don't pay for Facebook or any of these other platforms is because they are getting data from you. And I firmly believe in the next 3 to 4 years, the personal data revolution will take off, where I will actually decide if you can advertise to me. And when I say this in a room full of advertisers, they literally laugh me out of the room. Advertising will never go away. Who here uses an ad blocker or some sort of filtering? I don't like seeing ads. I don't see ads because my browser does not show ads. There's no value to me. But I see a time when I will actually have an intelligent agent. And my intelligent agent will go out and look at the last 3 weeks of transactions with my bank, HSBC. And it will say, we see that you spend money with these companies, and so we're going to set up digital relationships. So back to the insurance example, my intelligent agent has learnt when my insurance is due. I have given a set of limits to say, if the insurance renewal is within these specifications, you have authority to electronically sign up again. So I don't need to see ads. And this is where my personal data will become my property, and all of you as organisations will have to bid for my attention. And this GDPR is saying, well, how do we get ahead of that? And if you believe that what I'm saying is correct, then this could be an opportunity, not a threat. So I've covered a lot of information this afternoon. I want to think of things for this week and next week. Who's going to be game enough and brave enough to sell more stuff on the whiteboard in permanent marker? Who's going to be game enough to take the chairs out of the meeting room and see what people say? Who's going to start researching all of these different technical terms to see how they might impact our organisation? And who's going to set up smart innovation teams to practice these things? As I said at the beginning, I give you permission to disrupt or be disrupted. Thank you very much.